I feel like this is also kind of like something that Carl Jung wrote about a lot, right? Of this kind of integration of the shadow, like it's becoming whole
Yes,
instead of being fragmented.
completely. Yeah, yeah, completely. And I suppose Jungian theory is probably the closest we have to a psychotherapy for psychedelics, really, apart from maybe, I
Right.
suppose, the transpersonal archetypal stuff, which also fits quite well to the mystical experience. But I think, yeah, the idea of getting to know your shadow and accepting your shadow and recognizing it is probably not as scary as you imagine it is. So it's kind of these parts, you know, through shame or whatever experiences we've had in relational, often experiences we've had in our youth where we were told we were bad or wrong, and so we split them off and pushed them away because they made us feel really awful about ourselves, and it's kind of going to those places of shame that just feel awful, and looking at them and were they really warranted, you know, why are you that awful and bad, and it's through, I suppose, this process of integrating our shadow, like you say, that we become more whole.
And I saw you gave a great talk at Breaking Convention, this conference in London last year, on this idea of two particular Jungian archetypes that are kind of useful in navigating this process. Could you say something about that?
Yeah, so after Psychedelic 1, myself and Roz kind of recognized that integration was going to be a key aspect of sustaining the benefits of the psychedelic experience, and that, you know, the trial was incredibly limited. I mean, also the Psychedelic 2, well, it was incredibly limited, but we had an aftercare person called Ashley Murphy-Beener who gave hooked people up to different resources and did mindfulness with people. So she definitely created more of a container and a support for the participants of Psychedelic 2. So we created an integration group in the UK, and yeah, it became, well, it's clear that it was incredibly important for people to have a space to talk about their psychedelic experiences. And as a result of creating that group, along with my colleague Greg Donaldson, who studied sort of transpersonal psychosynthesis therapy, what became clear is that often what people were struggling with were the mystical element of the psychedelic experience, that sort of transpersonal element, and how to weave it into the everyday, which, you know, is really what integration is. So we would talk about the archetypes of the pragmatist and the mystic, and how this dance between them is a necessary dance for integration. And I think that they just became sort of the archetypes that seemed to resonate with people in the group. When we talked about, we could see someone was like hung up. They wanted to go and live on an island and move away from the world and, you know, live in a daydream, like a mystic. And you can completely understand that experience, but you know that it's not going to last long. So it's just about how can you take all this wonder and awe and whatever it was that the person experienced and kind of honor it in a kind of ordinary, everyday way. And I suppose that's where the importance of the pragmatist comes in. So it's this dance that we would use in our integration group to kind of help people understand the importance of both archetypes.
And do you see people kind of maybe kind of over-identifying with the pragmatist as well? Would that look like someone who just kind of rejects the experience and just says, oh, it was a kind of a strange drug experience, and might struggle in that direction instead of overly on the mystic side?
Not so often, actually, to be honest. No. Yeah, I
It's
don't
more
know
about
that.
encouraging
Yeah,
people
most
to be
people
pragmatists.
would tend. Yeah, I think it's like we were trying to anchor and ground people,
Okay.
because people became more evangelical and they're mystical. Yeah, or I suppose there was this dissonance between this beautiful interconnected mystical experience that they may have had and the kind of everyday reality being difficult, and real relationships being sticky and messy and not so straightforward. So for me, I suppose, as a relational therapist, I'm very much talking about, well, how does this translate into your everyday relationships? Because that, to me, that's that's the indication of you really integrating stuff and improving your relationships in a very real, tangible way. But I think when people first discover psychedelics, they can just, it's the razzle dazzle of the mystical experience that beguiles them a little bit, or this idea of spiritual bypassing, where people just get hooked on these kind of transcendental states. But to me, that's experiential avoidance probably, and it's about how do you bring that into your everyday relationships, and how does that work in terms of, can you connect to people in a deeper way, can you be more honest, and so yeah, on the whole, normally we don't have a problem with people being too pragmatic.
Yeah, I guess the psilocybin will have
So
that effect
it's
on
more
people.
about, it's more, yeah, I mean, there might well be some, but they haven't really come to our groups as yet.